one of the most sensitive topics to talk about, especially in a church environment, is money. It is sensitive, but we all need it, and it is in the Bible. God has some instructions for us on how we're to manage what we earn. If you have debt, or if you're interested in building wealth for retirement, or you just want to be more generous, you will want to hear from my guest. Good News at Work is a Christian podcast ministry. We help Christians develop and improve biblical habits in their life. I'm Goldberg. I have over 20 years in corporate America teaching, developing, mentoring people on how to achieve their personal and professional goals, and I'm your faith coach. Today, we have a special guest that's going to help us understand what biblical habits we need to know about money and things that we can do to be a good steward of our money. Goldberg is a financial coach and my husband. He works in corporate finance, ensuring companies can take payments from customers. This means he really knows how credit cards work from the inside. He has a real estate license, is a Ramsey Preferred Financial Coach, and a facilitator of Financial Peace University. He has coached clients on a variety of topics to help them create a budget, make a plan to get out of debt, and learn how to start building wealth using Christian principles and the notable Ramsey Solutions baby steps. I have been strongly encouraging him to be one of my guests, and I finally got him. I appreciate him being such a good sport, and he did such a great job. I can't wait to share this message with you, so let's get started. Welcome to Good News at Work.
It is super great to be here.
Thank you for entertaining my frequent requests to talk about this topic, but let's get right into it. So you have a regular job. Why did you want to do financial coaching?
It was actually a strange set of circumstances that started this process. I had been thinking about what are ways that I can serve in church? What are ways that I can maybe have a business outside of my full-time job? And I was listening to the Ramsey show, and they were talking about this financial coaching master training that they have. And it was like this light bulb went off, really, because I work in finance. I am a relationally driven person. And the more they were talking about what this financial coaching training was, the more it just sounded like a perfect marriage between my finance life, my church life, my relationship skills, and my desire to really want to help people in their everyday life. It was this collision of all of these parts in my life that just came together.
I saw it. It was like an explosion from the inside out of like, I have found what pretty much God had created me to do here. I've seen it. It's been really, really fun. But for our audience, what is the difference between financial coaching and financial planner? Because we hear financial planning a lot.
So a financial planner or an investment provider is somebody that's actually going to do the investing for someone. A financial coach, very similar to what the coach does for somebody that's in sports or a career coach or anything like that. As a coach, my job, my role, I guess I should say, is to really listen to people. What are their goals? What are their ambitions? What do they want to do? Help them put a plan together for their budget, for their spending, be able to just talk about what are the things that are going on in their life at that time. I don't help people with the investment side to like pick the individual investments, but I help them set a plan for their financial life. I'm the cheerleader along the way, answer questions, brainstorm with people, help them to see things differently. Sometimes it just takes somebody on the outside to come alongside you and say, hey, here's a different way to be able to see things from a way that they just never saw it before.
Put a light on it that you hadn't seen before.
Yeah. At the end of the day, my role is to help inject hope into somebody where they don't see any hope of getting to the other side. When someone's early on in this process, if they're deep in debt or they're struggling and they just can't see a way out, my role is to help them understand, no, there's other people that have done the same thing and that there is a place on the other side of where they're at.
How do we align our lives to what the Bible's telling us about how to manage our money?
So I think that one of the things that I always think about with this is debt has become normal in our world. And debt's just one piece of somebody's financial life, or hopefully it's not a piece of somebody's financial life, but finances are a part of our everyday life. And Jesus talked about it in the New Testament when he was alive for 33 years. Like, Jesus talked about finances a lot. The Old Testament, finances are talked about a lot. Jesus confronted the rich young ruler and said, sell everything you have and follow me. And that was not a prescription for everybody. It was Jesus helping him to see that his idol was his money and his finances. Any of us can make money an idol in our life, but our finances are really one way to see where are we looking? What are we having our focus on? Doesn't mean that you can't be wealthy. It doesn't mean that you can't pursue having money. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't. In fact, you need to. There are numerous scriptures that talk about finances. And if God talks about it that much, it's got to be important to us as well.
Yeah, it's really important. We're called to be good stewards of our money.
Yeah.
So,
and it's not really ours. It's actually
Right.
God's money,
Right.
and we're just a manager of it, because there's not a U-Haul on the back of a hearse
yeah.
when we die. We don't get to take any of this with us. And God's entrusting us with his resources. And so we have this responsibility to manage it well.
One of the things I think that we probably hear the most about when it comes to money, like referenced in the Bible, is tithe.
Yep.
But if you're in a lot of debt, are you still supposed to tithe?
So I don't necessarily look at tithing as a prescriptive 10% is absolutely has to be what you give. It's more, it's a guide, right? Giving is a muscle that we all have to exercise. And that should be one of the first things in somebody's budget, no matter what. And even if it's giving a little, you start exercising that muscle early on in the process. Then when you have more, you'll give more. When somebody says, oh, I'll give when I have more money, well, then they won't, because then their lifestyle changes as that money
creeps
comes
in.
in. And it creeps in. Giving should always be a part of anybody's budget, but it doesn't necessarily mean you must give 10%. It's really about what is God calling you to do. The problem becomes when people are in debt, or when they don't have the resources to do it, when they've gotten so deep in a hole. Now, we were talking about scripture, the Bible says the debtor is slave to the lender. Now you're making money and you're having to work to pay the debt that you have, instead of being able to use those resources and use the money that God's blessed you with to be able to help others, to be able to save for yourself, to save for your family, to spend on things that God's called you to do, whether that's an individual, whether that's a church, whether that's a business. When you have debt, now you're stuck because you're a slave to that debt. You're a slave to that lender, and you don't have the opportunity to do what God would otherwise call you to do, because now you've mismanaged
Yeah.
your finances.
I mean, you put handcuffs on in some
Absolutely.
senses. What do
You
you
lose choices.
Yeah,
You lose
exactly.
choices.
What do you think being in debt or being a slave to the lender, Proverbs 22:7, by the way, what do you think that does to somebody spiritually when you have debt?
Yeah, it is crushing, because now you don't have the ability to make choices. And so when your focus is now on your debt, and so it distracts you from hearing what God is calling you to do. It distracts you from being able to listen and have peace. One of the things that I ask a lot of my coaching clients, or when I'm teaching Financial Peace University, early on in the process, I'll ask somebody to close their eyes and then to imagine they don't owe anyone anything. You can see it happen with people, like physically, they rest and they relax, and you'll see a smile that comes across somebody's face, and it changes your position, because then when you have debt, you're stuck, you're weighted down. It's no different than sin. Sin can bring shame, which is not from God, but sin brings weight upon you. We can confess and we're forgiven, but it prevents you from living the life that God has called you to live. Debt is the same way. If God calls you to go and do something, if you're working a job and you hate it, or it's not what God has called you to do. And God's called you to be a teacher, or God's called you to go into the mission field,
Or start a podcast.
or start a podcast, or whatever it might be that God calls you to do. If you have debt and you have to keep a job, if I try to take a job or move on or want to leave that position or leave that career, I can't do that if I have to pay this debt.
What would you tell someone who feels like they will never be out of debt, that maybe they have acquired so much or they just don't see that path to get out?
It doesn't matter if somebody has tons of debt or if they have a little bit of debt. The same idea applies, and that is, what is the next right step? Now, there's some hopelessness that can come in having huge amounts of debt. And I work with people that have had anything from $10,000 of debt or less. I've had folks that have had hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. And as you're saying, right, they don't see hope. They don't see how to get there. It takes a lot of work. It's really easy to get into debt. Sometimes it's really fast, but it's going to take time to get out of it as well. But it's hard work.
Yeah.
And so anytime I have a client that thinks it's going to be easy, I'm very upfront. This is not easy. It's difficult work and it's taking responsibility. But I always tell people, and I continue to reinforce, there is hope. There is a way. There is an other side. And sometimes it takes numerous sessions for somebody to actually start to see the possibility, to actually see that there might be a way out.
Yeah.
But there's always a way out.
There's this moment of, let's get organized of what my situation is.
Yeah.
Let's determine what the plan is, get it in place, and start working the plan.
Yeah. A lot of times people don't even want to look at the numbers because they're so afraid.
It can be overwhelming.
It can be very overwhelming. And so they don't even know how much they have. And I'm going to sound like I've drank the Ramsey Kool-Aid, but it's true. You know, John Deloney and Dave Ramsey, everybody talks about this. The facts are your friends. And so once you know how much there is, and once you know how many debts there are, and once you know the order of smallest to largest, having the information in front of you and knowing it is the first step to getting out. But if somebody is so afraid to even look at it, to know what it is, that's where that fear comes in, because they don't even know.
You had mentioned a little bit earlier about student loans, people going to school, going in debt from going to school.
Yeah.
It is so common right now. We have some friends that have kids that are getting ready to go off to school, and it's almost like the default. Well, we're just going to go get a student loan. Why is signing up for a student loan and paying it off when you get a really good job, why is that such a big deal?
It's funny because I've just been reading George Campbell's book, and I was just reading the chapter about student loans, and there's so much misinformation that's out there. At the end of the day, it's still debt. And you're sold this bill of goods that so many students graduate with tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt because they went to a famous school instead of
At 21, 22
at
years old.
21 years old. They don't even know what they're getting themselves into. But in society, we talk about, oh, go to college, get in debt, borrow money. And they don't have a clue as to how much money they're going to owe 4, 5, 6 years later when they're done, and whether or not they're going to be able to get a job in their field to be able to make enough money to live life and pay these student loans. At the end of the day, you can call it whatever kind of loan you want. It is still debt that you have to pay back. And it is a hindrance to being able to move forward in life when they get to the other side of that. If it means having to work and go to school at the same time, and it takes a little bit longer to get a degree, if you even need a degree for what you want to do, take that time. So many employers, most employers, have tuition reimbursement where you can go to school and you can work and you can graduate with a degree and no debt.
Yeah.
Because your employer will pay for your tuition.
My employer paid for my master's degree. I didn't pay anything for it. I had to continue to work there for another year just
Yeah.
to make sure. But yeah, that's certainly an option. Are there other alternatives? You talked about working while going to school.
Yep.
But having your employer possibly give you some reimbursement for it. Are there other alternatives?
Scholarships, 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 scholarships. There are so many scholarships there's grants and there's scholarships that are out there. Applying for scholarships should be your job. And there's people that say, oh, I don't want to apply for that scholarship. It's only $50 or it's only $100. Well, if it takes 15 minutes to fill out an application for a scholarship and you get it and it was $100, you just made $400 an hour for that 15 minutes.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. Like sign me up for a $400 an hour job.
Yeah.
Right. So absolutely apply for scholarships or save money and wait. Go work a job. If you work a job at an employer that doesn't have tuition reimbursement, okay, save money and wait. Or evaluate whether or not the career that you're looking for really does require a degree. There's so many roles out there that don't require a degree. And yes, the statistics would indicate that people with a college degree tend to make more, but it really depends upon what are you called to do. There's some careers that absolutely requires a college degree.
Yeah, I kind of hope my doctor has a degree.
Doctor, lawyer,
some training,
accountant, teacher. Like these are positions that require college degrees. And there's plenty of others. But there's people that are in the IT field that they don't need a college degree. They need certifications to be able to demonstrate that they have specific technical skills. More and more employers are not requiring a college degree. They're requiring skills.
That's, you could always go back and go to school anytime if
Absolutely.
you want to do that.
Absolutely.
I mean, we spend hours on YouTube watching cats fall off of, curbs or something. But what if you spent that time learning coding or something in the IT field?
Or going to trade school for a career in the trades. Like college is not for everybody. We don't have to sell that bill of goods to every student saying you're less than if you don't go to college.
Yeah, I like to hug my HVAC guy or HVAC girl in the middle of summer when my air conditioning is not working.
Let's get real. I'll pay whatever it takes. If our air conditioner goes out, we're going to pay whatever it takes to get it fixed in August because it's hot.
Yeah.
And no.
Or a carpenter, like you've been trying to get a hold of somebody for weeks to try and work on something. So
it's not a skill. It's not a talent that I have. Could I learn some of these things? Sure. But am I going to be able to do it as well as somebody that's gifted and talented and has gone through an apprenticeship or learned these things and they're passionate about it? I'm not going to do it as well. And so looking for someone, a plumber, to come and
good plumber,
and fix a toilet. Like I'm not going to repair my car.
Yeah.
Because we actually want it to get us to work.
And not be damaged more.
Exactly. Like, hey, I was able to replace the interior cabin air filter, but that wasn't because I knew how to do it. YouTube.
Yep.
Right?
What if you already have your son or daughter, stepchild or whatever, if they're already in college, they already have student loans, but they maybe got a year or two left. What would you recommend in those kind of situations?
Get a job.
Like no more loan.
Yes.
No more loan, get a job.
Yes, absolutely. And it's no different than what I would tell somebody that's using credit cards or that's taking out a personal loan. Don't dig your hole deeper that you're going to have to dig out of later and that you're going to have to fill that hole in with money later to get out of debt. Stop the bleeding and find a way. Do whatever it takes to not borrow anymore.
Yeah. I think people feel so much pressure to just be done. Hurry up as fast as you can do it, be done. But there is such a thing as just in time, where you have just the right of money to like go pay for the semester of tuition, and then you go and make more money and then pay for the next session of school, et cetera, et cetera.
Maybe it's somebody that has some money to pay for school, but they're borrowing to cover the difference. Well, evaluate the school that you're in. Don't just go to a school because they've got some great football team and it's some famous name. Like you're going to college to get an education. And that's not an education in beer pong and table tennis. It's you're going to school to get an education to fulfill your calling to work, to get a job, to live your life. Don't just go and pay an exorbitant amount at some famous school just because my parents went there, or just because all my friends are going there, or because they've got these great amenities. Oh, well, they have
a rec center.
They have a rec center, and now
A jogging trail.
Right. But there's all these amenities, and there's so much marketing that schools do about these cool things that they've added. Well, how about the cool thing of having a good, solid education?
Imagine.
Yeah.
Imagine that philosophy. Scripture tells us that the root of all evil is the love of money. And we've been talking a lot about money. So how do we, as Christians, build wealth but not love money? Because I could always use more money, but what's the balance there? How do we do that?
Being wealthy isn't the only prescription for somebody that could love money. Somebody that has very little could love money and be so focused and so zoned in on money that it is their love as well. Loving money is not just for somebody that's wealthy. That can be at any spectrum of income, at any spectrum of savings. It's really about, is that your focus? Is that,
it's like the condition of your heart?
Yeah, it's all about the condition of your heart.
Okay. So it's okay as a Christian to have wealth.
Absolutely. There's nothing wrong at all. In fact, the Bible tells us to have an inheritance for your children's children. David was wealthy.
It's true. King David.
King David was wealthy. Solomon was wealthy. King David was called a man after God's own heart, but he was very wealthy. Then there's the rich young ruler. The condition of his heart was the love of money, of things, and the love of money. Sell everything that you have and follow me. Matthew, one of the disciples, was wealthy. He was a tax collector.
He had a steady income.
He had quite the steady income. His heart was changed. And so you can be wealthy, but not let that wealth control you.
I know one of the things that we do at this podcast, we talk a lot about habits. That's a lot of our podcast focus. So when it comes to money and stewarding our money, what are those habits that we should be developing?
Set a budget. Live on a budget. Have a budget. Live on less than you make, but make a plan for your money every single month. We have a family budget meeting every month. It was difficult to do the first couple months that we did it because it's never perfect. But you learn a little better, you learn a little better, and you learn a little better. And so the best habit anybody can do, starting point, is always, always, always going to be have a budget. Giving every dollar a job, giving it an assignment before the month starts. Because otherwise what happens is it just kind of leaks away and you get to the end of the month and you go, where did it all go?
How much did I spend on groceries?
Right.
Wow, I had no idea.
And even with a budget, we say that sometimes. But
Costco, okay.
I almost got in trouble there. So it's giving every dollar an assignment. And sometimes that assignment is for the current month. Sometimes that assignment is for 6 months from now, because you set aside money to plan for things. Because guess what? You can plan ahead, decide how much money are you going to save for Christmas, and set a little bit aside every month so that when Christmas comes next year, you have the money already to be able to spend it on gifts, instead of getting to December and go,
it's an emergency.
Yeah, Christmas is not an emergency. That's not the emergency fund. But planning ahead and thinking about what are those expenses and doing that every single month, being intentional about what you do with your money and taking the control back from your bank account.
The habit of budgeting. You heard it from Rob Goldberg, financial coach. Can't thank you enough for coming and doing this and entertaining my requests. But please tell everybody how they can find you online, or if they need a coach, or if they know somebody who might need a coach.
Yeah, so I have a website. It's robertgoldbergfinancialcoaching.com. There's links on there to be able to schedule an initial coaching session. That first discovery session is always a complimentary free session, because people need to understand what it's like to work with me, what I'm going to be doing for any of your listeners or viewers of Good News at Work, they'll get 2 sessions, not just 1.
Oh, wow. All right. Well, there you heard it. Free session. Just make sure you identify yourself as one of our listeners or watchers. Thank you for helping us understand our money a little better. I'm hoping everybody out there was able to find some wisdom in what we were talking about and found some ways that you might be able to apply those things to your life. I have a daily view of Rob's compassion for people in really tough positions and his practical advice on getting out of debt and building wealth. So reach out to him if you need help. Check the notes for all of his contact information. Thank you for watching, and be sure to select the next video as I think you're going to like it. Subscribe, give a thumbs up, and help us help YouTube find more people like you. We hope you keep putting the good news to work in your life.